This podcast is supported by listeners like you. We're grateful for your tax-deductible donation at newthoughtphilly.org or the link in the episode description.
A practical prayer is a prayer that works.
These discussions between Reverend Bill Marcioni and Carol Lawrence dive into the details of how it works and how to work it.
Reverend Bill is a New Thought minister and the author of Practical Prayer for Real Results.
Your new life begins with a new thought.
Carol Lawrence is on a spiritual quest, finding the New Thought teaching after decades on the pulpit in 3 different traditional denominations.
I've got some questions.
Together, they're exploring the philosophy and activities that come together from many of the world's religions to create the practical spirituality that is New Thought.
Welcome to the Practical Prayer Podcast. I'm Carol, here with Reverend Dr. Bill Marcioni.
We're doing another episode of the Practical Prayer Podcast, and I'm looking forward to this conversation because any conversation that starts with, in these difficult times like we're currently living, ... which of course, on the one hand, we are living in difficult, challenging times now, and you can go and look at self-help books that came out in the 70s and after 9/11 and during World War II and before World War I and all the way back. And they all will say stuff like, in challenging times like we're dealing with today. And that's, for me, a reminder that even though these times are challenging, this is not necessarily new. Might be a bigger challenge than we thought we'd faced in the past, but that's just a matter of degree.
That's helpful too in this conversation because there have always been difficult times. And even in the good times in the United States, there have been people who are experiencing at the same time difficult times. What feels different is it feels quite overwhelming and widespread and very threatening in a lot of ways. But it just occurred to me in my quest to try to figure all of this out, I have a choice. We all have a choice as to how we want to handle it. Do we want to be upset? And the first thing I always think of is, well, if I'm upset, I can't figure anything out. So I gotta not be upset. You know, I have to choose not to be upset. And that's when you're gonna love this. That's when my control freak nature works in my favor. You do not be upset right now. You do not be upset.
You can control yourself into not being upset?
I can do that. I can do
Excellent.
If I have a choice, and it's just reminding myself that I have a choice. And in this moment, I need to make that choice. I need to do it today. And so then when I get there, it goes from there. It's just all a part of, let me blame you, right? Can I? It's part of New Thought theology or New Thought philosophy, the teaching of Ernest Holmes. We got a choice.
You can't blame anybody?
No.
There's one power and presence, there's one love, there's one source, there's one creator. Then what can you be mad at?
I can just go with, let's start with the choice, because I can't even get to that level of thinking, that you just expressed until I'm not upset. Mm-hmm. And I'm saying me, but me in general, because I'm assuming that that's the same, kind of protocol for everybody. You're not, the Bible says that you can't reason with an angry person. So you got to calm yourself down so that you can reason with yourself.
Yeah. And with all of that, I have to acknowledge that what's going on currently in our political affairs is a little bit different than in the past. And mostly it's because of the speed at which stuff is happening.
Exactly.
So in a lot of cases, something happens and then there's an adjustment and there's a push and a pushback and a reestablishment of equilibrium. And now stuff is coming really, really fast. It's turning very quickly, and it's faster than the usual systems are geared up to respond. And something will happen. There will be whatever changes, adjustments, damage, carnage, you pick your word, whatever it is that happens, and then the system will start to weeble itself back into position, because that's the way our system works. Unless it's completely toppled and turned over, in which case you and I get to be different people than we are, and I don't think that's going to happen. Then there will be a rebalancing somehow. So, as I was sitting on the beach last week, I got a wonderful lesson from the sunrise, because we were in a place where we could see the sunrise. I could see the sunrise every day. And I watched the sunrise 4 mornings in a row. And they were all exactly the same, and they were all different because of the way that it happened. And where I was, the sunrise was somewhere between 7:04 the first day and 7:01 the last day. And it doesn't matter what we do. The sun is still going to come up tomorrow morning. In that particular place, in that particular way. The view might be different. The decorations might be different. The way that I feel about it might be different. But the sun is coming up tomorrow. Some big picture, even if everything goes completely to hell, the universe is not going to change that much. And I know that what you wanted to talk about was the sort of the intersection of God's will and purpose.
Yeah, in a very personal way within the narrative that we're living right now, because things are happening quickly. Yes, they are happening quickly. But when you think about it, over the last couple of years, a lot of things have been happening quickly, and we've noticed it, and just in small ways, because I can remember conversations that I've had with people. Can't believe this is happening. This is happening so quickly. Maybe not negative things, maybe just little changes in life and just things that you notice. So in this scenario that we're talking about right now, things are happening so quickly, for me, when I had to decide how I was going to respond within it all, I'm not going to get freaked out, because I'm just not doing that. So I have to look and say, okay, this is something else that happens really quickly, and find my way to walk through it. And that's what I'm talking about in terms of purpose. Not God's overall purpose and why is all this happening, but is there or assume that there is a personal purpose, at least one of the things we can assume, how we can walk through this, not knowing, you talked about, I think you didn't use the word casualties, but there's collateral damage. There's going to be collateral damage. And there always has been. Sometimes it hasn't been that visible. Maybe it didn't show itself or manifest itself in certain communities, certain socioeconomic spaces, but there's been collateral damage all over the place always. So, okay, this is not something that came from outer space. So I look to get centered in this. And you mentioned this is going to balance itself out. Maybe not before, like the tsunami takes down a bit of property, but everything changes. And so this is in a way, this is really different to say. This is opportunity, in a sense.
Always.
Yeah. And I hesitated with that because I didn't want it to sound insensitive, because when people are hurting, they don't want to hear about opportunity, but it is. That's at least one perspective. You can look at it for maybe 10 or 15 minutes and see if there's any merit in there, something that you can, extract from that.
And just to a really practical example of what you're talking about. So the current government administration is going through and like tearing down stuff that's been there for decades, just crumpling it up and throwing it away. And there's the huge outcry from people who say that's been serving a wonderful, very important, vital purpose, and how dare we just throw away all of this very good work. And it is completely likely that whatever we were doing before is going to get reinstated, at least to a certain extent. And it's also completely possible that as we bring it back, instead of bringing back the whole thing, the parts that were working well and the parts that were just leftover dinosaur stuff from the early days, then we get to reinvent it along the way.
Mm-hmm.
So is everything that I was doing 5 years ago valuable? Well, no. I can look back 5 years ago and say, well, that didn't work. And I could have done this differently. And things that I set about doing and committed myself to, it turns out were not the most productive thing in the world. And I could have used my energy for something different. Well, maybe that's what we get to do now. I don't know. Do I think this is the way to do it? It's none of my business. Do I think this is a good thing? Again, none of my business. But I do get to pay attention and say, what is it that we're creating next? What is it that we're ushering in? And make sure that that fits with who I want to be. Because, there's a huge world that's going on. There's, politicians and government that are in power. And, there's this huge country with 330 million people. But this is my country. I got one. Mm-hmm. This is my world. I got one. This is my universe. I got one. And I'm a participant in it. So to whatever extent I have something to say about it, I'm going to pay attention to what the possibilities are, to what the opportunities are, and be prepared that when it is my turn to take a step, I follow the guidance and take the step. And in the meantime, let go. Mm-hmm. It's possible to spend 4 years or 8 years gasping. It doesn't help.
When we take a breath, in meditation, the breath is so important. And I see taking a breath as a pause. Just wait a second right here. Now, that has always been something that I remember hearing myself say since I can remember way back in early high school days. Just take a step back and see what's happening. This is whatever it is a real mess. So what do I do in this time? And the first thing I thought of was opportunity. Let me see what's happening here. That is an opportunity for me to grow, for me to move forward, for me to notice, for me to learn all kinds of things, not to deny the fact that there is a lot of upsetness. It feels like confetti just got thrown up in the air. So, yep. But here's the other thing, right? Like the universe is very orderly. The planets don't just go crashing into each other. There's some kind of order in the universe. So this, whatever it is going to, without option, have to come into a place of order at some point. And I remember Y2K. The world was going to end. There was going to be no more water, no more food to canned foods. It was just all done. And I'm thinking, there's a certain place I look to see if there's panic. If there's no panic over there, I'm good. Right. So that's what I did. So here we are again with a different label. And sure. Okay, so what is this? We could take a pause. We don't have to get caught up in the wind of worry. Not that there's nothing to worry about. I'm not trying to diminish it. But everything changes. Everything changes.
Everything changes. I have the advantage/disadvantage of remembering Y2K very clearly. Now, you were already in ministry by then. You weren't in the private sector still, were you?
No.
Okay. Because I was still in the private sector. And in fact, I was working for the huge technology company, the one we had in common, which was Digital Equipment Corporation. And Y2K was a huge thing. Oh my God, this could be awful. We need to do remediation and mitigate and all the rest of it. And people now don't even know what the deal was. Like, why is anybody concerned about this at all? And I've actually spent some time thinking about it lately because it was a catastrophe and it could have been a catastrophe and we avoided a catastrophe. And everybody thinks, oh, it was just a big lot of noise about nothing. And the fact of the matter is, if we hadn't done all the stuff that we did about Y2K, it would have been a catastrophe. And here's what happened. Back in the middle of the 20th century, when computers were coming into being, they had to store the years for something. So 1968 was just 68 because they all started with a 19, and it wasn't an issue. And back in the early days, it was expensive to store data, and storing an extra 19 with everything was just inefficient. And unfortunately, as we got to the point where we were going to stop using 19s and we just had a 68 and an 00, it's very likely that the computer would get confused. Is this 38 years from now or 38 years ago? And that sort of confusion is really bad for programs because the chances of them all making the right guess and working properly were non-existent. So something would have stopped working. And it's possible that everything would have stopped working. You have somebody that says, oh, well, just, wait 10 minutes, but then it's going to wait 100 years plus 10 minutes. And that means that it's broken forever until somebody goes in and wrenches it back into operation. So that's what Y2K was about. It was about understanding that we'd made an assumption for all of the very pragmatic reasons that we did, but now we needed to go back and fix all of that. Unfortunately, we got desensitized a little bit. Oh, well, it was nothing. Well, no, the people who did all the work to remediate fixed it before there was a problem. And there were only a couple of little tiny problems that glitched about at the beginning of the century. Fast forward. So we got climate change now. Oh, it's the same thing. You don't need to deal with that. It'll go away by itself. Well, no, you still need to deal with it. It's a thing. And we should probably attend to it because otherwise it could come back around and do something awful. And all of the other things we can do, everybody just likes to brush stuff under the rug, and there's no longer room under the rug. So we do have the opportunity to pay attention to the circumstances and the situations and what's going on, especially situations that we've created ourselves. Humanity gets itself into a situation, humanity can probably get itself out of the situation rather than saying, well, God will protect me. It's like, no, God gave you the tools to cause this problem.
So what I'm hearing in your story is to look at it and say, okay, well, it'll just take care of itself is not the best way to look at it. That's rather immature way for it to be looked at. So I hear that.
The head in the sand thing, yeah. It's likely that's not going to be the best.
And the example that you brought up and you explained Y2K was a perfect example of what I'm thinking. What I want to share from my thoughts in that, there were people who were able to fix it. There were people. Mm-hmm. And 1 Corinthians 12, there's I hugely appreciate the Bible, of course. There's some scriptures or some stories that really make a lot of sense in times like this. So in 1 Corinthians 12, there's gifts. So each of us possess different gifts. And I hugely respect that because you can do something that I can't do. And a situation may come about that I'm going to have to call you rather than try to fix it and break it and mess it up and make it worse. So I recognize that you have these gifts. That was intentional, without going back too far. That's intentional. We are all different. So I respect that. And so Ernest Holmes, and I'm rushing through this because it feels like I need to rush through it, but Ernest Holmes talks about one mind, and we all think from that one mind. Mm-hmm. So that is the most encouraging thing and the most grounding thing that I think you can hold on to, because in that one mind, there are minds like yours who were highly technical and dealing with the Y2K thing. You understood it, blah, blah, blah. There was no need for me to go get involved. I believed that, from my own perspective, I believed that, this thing's going to work out. I know it is because of certain things I believe. And people like you were saying, we understand how this. So the one mind is got the solution. It's going to work.
Mm-hmm.
So let me bring it up to right now. This crazy, difficult situation that we're in, it seems overwhelming to me in some ways. I'm a little bit too old to get freaked out all the way. Because I've seen
works in your favor.
Yeah, because I've seen too much. But and I've seen too much repeatedly that I know it doesn't change. But here's what's going on now. And that one mind is still able and got people in it that are going to do what needs to be done, because that's why we're here. You know what I mean? I'm here to do what I do. And, somebody asked me, well, listen, this is the air I breathe. This is the air I breathe. I don't know how to cook. I'm not a good cook. Don't send me any notes or recipes about how you're going to pray for me to be a good cook. I don't care. That's not what I do. This right here is what I do, whatever that is. Mm-hmm. And that's why I'm here. So I trust that the solution to this crazy madness, the solution is already in the divine mind. Do you know what I mean? It's.
I know exactly what you mean.
So
and I think I know where the problem came from, and that kind of leads towards where the solution is. Let's take a break, and then we'll come and talk. We'll come back and talk about sense of separation.
Learn to put practical prayer to work in your life. The steps are simple to learn and let you begin to get real results to create the life of your dreams immediately. Reverend Bill Marchione's widely acclaimed book, Practical Prayer for Real Results, gives you a clear summary of the New Thought principles behind practical prayer and the series of easy-to-understand steps found in the most effective prayers from religions and spiritual practices all over the world and throughout history. Practical prayer is not a replacement for your religion or practice. It's a technique to make the work you do in consciousness even more effective. The book includes 40 prayers on various topics that you can adapt as needed and use as your own. Practical Prayer for Real Results is available in paperback, Kindle, and audiobook on Amazon or at b-the-light.com. That's b-the-light.com.
Welcome back to the Practical Prayer Podcast. I'm Carol, here with Reverend Dr. Bill Marchione.
We're having a conversation about these troubling times in which we live and the ways to think about it and work on it and not necessarily just wring our hands in anguish about it. And I said before the break that we would talk about the sense of separation. Because we talk a lot about the notion and the belief, the core fundamental belief there's one mind, one power, one presence, one love, one source that is sharing itself as all of its creation. That's kind of the bedrock of the New Thought philosophy, and that's where we start. There is only one, and we can do the creation stories to get back to it if we want to. I'm not going to do that right now. And we are all part of that one. And that means that everything is that one love taking its own particular form. But in the world that we live in with our five senses, we have a very definite boundary line between what's me and what's not me. There's the inner and then there's the outer. And the fact that we're all connected is just not obvious at all. And as soon as we have that illusion, it is possible. And what we're seeing now is people are saying, well, if I'm over here and you're over there, then in order for me to be a winner, whatever that means, then you need to be a loser. It's a zero-sum game. We're starting out with one pie and everybody gets a piece of pie, rather than understanding that it's an infinite pie and we can all have as much pie as we want. And by the way, everybody who's listening to me has had the experience of going to an all-you-can-eat buffet and trying to beat the buffet and eat more than they have. And it's not possible. No matter what you bring to it, you're going to fill up before it empties out. Mm-hmm. That's the nature of the universe. And we forget. We think, oh, I have to get that slice of turkey before somebody else gets it. And that's where the whole game goes sideways, is to think that I need to take something away from somebody else in order to have something for myself. And there's a boundary between our spiritual nature and our experiential, our physical nature, our human nature, where we can live in a world that's limitless and infinite, where there is no separation, but it could be experiencing that separation and then act in ways that go completely against what would be true about our nature if we understood our connection with everything. So that's what's playing out. People think they need to take stuff away from other folks in order to have stuff for themselves.
Yeah, I see that. What about the never enoughness? Because certainly there's enough.
Yeah.
I love the pictures that come back from the drones when it just around the world, it just shows all the beautiful foliage and what there is enough of everything. Mm-hmm. But I think there's something like some little piece in the brain that's off that says, what I have is not enough. I got to get more. I got to get more. I want it all. I want everything. That's something to look at, I think.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Because
in
our,
Go ahead.
No, and in terms of our separation, I have to take it because it may not, I have to have this. But when is there enough? And to say that one person cares about another and say, okay, I have enough. Do you have enough? Let me help you get enough. Well, nobody wants to get to that level of the discussion. So let's hang out with, there's greed. Is that greed? That I have to have it all? How much do you need?
It is ignoring the spiritual principle and focusing simply on the human, the temporal, what's going on in the world around us. And the part that is, in a way, amusing, but if it weren't so tragic, I've been teaching this class on how to do healing like Jesus, so I've been reading a lot of early New Testament stuff, the Gospels. And the current political movement is wanting to be Christian national. So they're leading with their Christianity. They want everybody to be Christian. And Jesus really clearly said, don't put your treasure in the storehouse. Don't try and save stuff because it'll go bad. The moths will eat it. It will rust. It will go bad. Count on the infinite to provide what needs to be provided. And implied in all of that is that there's plenty for everybody. Mm-hmm. He's talking about how beautifully the lilies are decorated. Well, I don't want to be dressed like a lily, but I get the point. And the same thing is true of us. Once we let go of the thought that I need to take everything that there is and put it in the storehouse so I'll have it for later, and trust that there will be enough for me and for everybody, that's the game changer. Mm-hmm. That's the game changer. And the sad part is, we're hearing, oh, you need to be more Christian, but we're going to ignore that pretty fundamental thing that actually, Jesus actually said. This isn't something that people said Jesus said or think that Jesus meant. This is something that he actually said.
So we that's why years and years ago, I just got this crazy idea to lift out all the red letters and read what Jesus said. Before I found books that did it for me, I did that. And
you did that manually? That's cool. You can find them on the internet easily now.
Yeah, now, thanks. I was thinking about when you had to go up in the stacks and sneeze because of the dust on the books. So I'm telling it all, aren't I? But I keep this in my mind because of the metaphysical interpretation of things. Interpretation is king. I keep
Hmm.
saying that. Interpretation is king. And if you want to get on the road to truth, because I'm careful not to say to the truth, but you have to say that there's okay, this is the way I see it. Is there any other way to look at it? And then when I look at it that way, is there any other way to look at it?
Yep.
It depends on what your desire is. Mine is peace. I want peace. Don't bother me and just let me be free to go get my sushi and get down to the to the ocean, right? And as I want, I'm careful not to say that's all I want because, when you get something, then you want a little more and you want a little more. But stay in the moment of the desire. Okay, this is what you want right now. I've got this. I'm thinking already, you know what? I think I'd like this. Okay, go with that. But there's some fear or something inside, and maybe a little something else. It's that I have to have it all and I have to control it all. And, you know, I'll leave it at that for the moment.
Yep. Oh, it's possible to go in like a dozen different directions at this point. An interesting exercise is to intentionally, when something comes up that I like or I don't like, I don't want this to happen. If my response is, well, what if I don't do anything about that? What if I just let that happen? Then what?
Then, yeah.
Then what? So let me just see what happens, And there's our chicken little. Oh my God, the sky is falling. Everything is horrible. Nothing's, everything's gone. What happens if I don't do that? What happens if I don't take control the way that I know that I can and I should?
Right.
And see what happens.
Yeah.
So there's a lot going on. We will take another break now, and the prayer is going to be, on the one hand, it's on peace, which is peace in the world around us, and peace of mind, which is that same peace but internally, and also surrender. Because when we have the answers, we are at our most dangerous. When we let go of the thought that we already know and we say, well, maybe there's something else possible, maybe there's something different going on here, then it's game on. Let's take a break and come back with a prayer. It's Reverend Bill letting you know that the Practical Prayer for Real Results class is now available on demand. That's right, you can take it at your own pace, anytime you want. All of the information is at BeTheLight.com. That's B-the-light.com. You know where to find that stuff. The class is 5 lessons, broken down into 18 modules, and you can take them at whatever pace is comfortable for you. As you work through the process, it starts out with the theory, goes into the practice, there are experiential activities and exercises, and at the end of the program, you will wind up with an understanding of how practical prayer works, and a practical prayer for yourself that will work to create transformation in your life. And as you know, it works for everything. Take a look at the class online at BeTheLight.com. There's a sample lesson so you can see how the class is going to work for you and then dive in. The great news is it's on sale now. You can register and save $20 off of the regular price. I'm looking forward to seeing you in class.
Welcome back to the Practical Prayer Podcast. I'm Carol, here with Reverend Dr. Bill Marcioni.
We're talking about what happens when what we think we know isn't accurate. Because the most dangerous is when something happens and I know what that means. I know what happened. I know what it means. I know what to do. And the metaphor is somebody who gets the idea that I need to follow this path. I'm going to run down this path. I'm going to drive down this path as quickly as I can because that's the way to get to where I'm going. And somebody says, the bridge is out, or there's a cliff that way, or there's something else that's not what you think about the path. When we make the decision, I know best, and I'm not paying attention to those voices, those other people who have a different idea, catastrophe, the game on. So the question that we get to ask ourselves, what if I don't have the answer? What if this other possibility is worth considering? What if there's something different that can happen? So we've been talking about, purpose and difficult times that we live in. And there are a lot of folks who are, wanting to put their head in the sand and not paying attention because it's just so overwhelming. And I get it. And maybe that's not the best thing to do either. Maybe the thing to do is to find a new balance point. Okay, how much can you pay attention to? What can you do so that you are aware that when your moment to take action comes along, you'll actually have an idea that it's yours to do? We talk about listening to the still small voice and letting that still small voice guide us and direct us and invite us and nudge us. And if we turn the background music up so loud that we can't hear it, just because it disturbs us to have all that noise going on, maybe we're going to miss something. So that's the prayer. The prayer is for that balance point. If I let go of everything that I think that I know, I can open myself to know something different. That's surrender. So as you're comfortable, go ahead and close your eyes, and we can turn away from the world around us so we can turn to that infinite power and presence, that divine essence that creates everything, that one source that shares itself as all of its creation, that infinite mind that knows everything. Open ourselves up to the awareness that that mind is embodied within us. Everything that infinite intelligence knows is available to us. And in order to access it, we need to let go of whatever thoughts are filling up our minds that we think must be the truth because we thought them. Take a deep, full breath. Let yourself be filled with a brand new idea. And breathe out and surrender. Let go of whatever has been there before. Allow some room for something new. Another breath in and invite in that newness, that freshness, that insight, that inspiration. And as you breathe out, again, let go. Let go of everything that you think you already know. Surrender it. Not because it's wrong. If it's right, it'll come back. Continue breathing. And allow that process of letting go of everything that you thought you knew, all of the activities that you thought you needed to be involved in, all of the strategies that you had for coping, let go of them. And invite in guidance for that newness. And while we're at it, we'll set the intention for that newness to fill us in a way that brings harmony and peace of mind to us, and peace and uplift into our world. Is it possible for this next experience of life to be even better than we could possibly imagine? Well, yeah. It's an infinite creative power that creates everything. This is the power that creates galaxies. That's the power that has created each of us. That is the power that has created this current situation. It certainly has the ability to create newness in a way that goes far beyond anything that we have experienced or understood or controlled so far. That's what we get to let go of. And as we do so, we make room for that magical wow, that next new experience that's not based on anything that we could have anticipated before. Good and more good is available. It is poised now, ready to unfold in our lives. Perhaps there are steps for us to take, in which case letting go of attachment to thinking we know how it's going to go and being open to the guidance so we can be informed as to when there is something to accept, to embrace, to participate in, and when it's possible to let go of things that are no longer serving. That guidance is always available. This is the partnership that we're in with that infinite creative power. It is constantly creating. It has created each of us and everything we know about, everything we experience, everything in this manifest universe. And it is creating this next new experience in ways that go beyond what we're thinking about. And so I'm grateful for all of this goodness. And with gratitude for this good, I speak this word, I release it into that creative law that creates everything. And I know it is now creating this. And so I let it be. And so it is.
The Practical Prayer Podcast with Reverend Bill Marcioni and Carol Lawrence is a production of BeTheLight.com,
be-the-light.com,
where you can find more information about practical prayer for real results.
Our theme is by Music of Wisdom. You can learn about the spiritual community of New Thought Philadelphia with daily guided meditations,
Weekly celebrations of spirit,
and Reverend Bill's classes in practical spirituality
at newthoughtphilly.org.
This podcast is supported by listeners like you. We're grateful for your tax-deductible donation at newthoughtphilly.org or the link in the episode description.